to lead effectively. As partners in life, Darren and I bring unfiltered insights from our work coaching executives and leaders. And Darren, our fearless founder of the Canthal Group, specializes in transforming executive teams into cohesive, high-performing units. And I, as the Chief Operating Officer and Executive Leadership Coach for high-performing women, help them optimize not just their leadership, but also their health. So we want you to join us every Tuesday-ish. We kind of say ish because, we like flexibility for direct, actionable leadership insights, plus one of Darren's infamous bad dad jokes. All right, so today we're discussing 5 topics as a leader: your style and philosophy, your values, speaking the unspoken, how to establish trust, and are you a bitch or a bimbo, or both? So whether you're leading teams, running organizations, navigating the complexities of executive leadership, you'll definitely walk away with practical, strategies that you can implement immediately. And I have to do one more shameless plug before, Darren, you give us our joke, and that is check out our new website at thecanthalgroup.com. We have spent many months on this project, and we are happy to say that it is officially live. Okay, Darren, take it away.
All right. Bad dad joke. Ready?
Bad dad joke. Go.
I just opened 3 birthday cards, and so far I got $80. I love being a postman.
Oh my God. That took a second. That's terrible. Wow. All right.
It took you a minute to get that one, huh?
It took me a second. Yeah, I had to pause on that one. I'm a little slow on the uptake on your jokes sometimes. All right, let's dive in. Let's talk about the leadership crisis. And we use that term because a lot of our clients, a lot of individuals that are in our circle that are leaders, we've had conversations over and over and over again about when you move from being the doer, the implementer in an organization to the leader, it doesn't come with a playbook. And so a lot of individuals have to figure out what exactly that means for them and how can they establish their own identity as a leader that carries with them regardless of what industry or organization that they're in, but also aligns with who they are as a person based on their core values. And one of the things that we've talked about and our clients have talked about is like, well, what's my style? What's my philosophy? What is the playbook now that I'm in this leadership position? So I'm gonna let you lead with this one. What are you seeing?
That was quite the lob. Well, I feel like in my head, there's an important piece of context here, which is from your side of the fence. And I'll just share my perspective and then you can fill in and then we'll go, which is you have a running group of a bunch of ladies that you run with on Sundays-ish. Of those ladies, many are leaders. And there was like 2 or 3 Sundays in a row where you came home, conversation amongst the running group was about work and these leaders. And in essence, these leaders weren't quite sure how they wanted to show up, where they thought it was okay to speak up or hold their tongue. There was a few, dare I even say, egregious examples where you and I were like dumbfounded at the decisions some of these runners had made. And so then as we were talking behind the scenes, it came up with this leadership crisis and really like, who are you as a leader? I feel like that was an important piece of context, at least for my brain. Did I capture that well?
You did. I was just intentionally leaving that out because they might be watching this and I don't want them to think I'm throwing them under the bus, but thanks.
Oh, no one's getting thrown under the bus. So, all right, segueing from that, over the years, as I've spoken with prospects, I hear a lot of different stories. And although very few leaders ever say to me, hey, I don't know what my leadership style and philosophy is, when we read between the lines, that's exactly what they're saying. To your point, there's no playbook. Some people think they're just going to read a book, or someone like you or I are going to tell them the framework. And if it was that easy, everybody would be the best leader because they would read whatever book they choose, they would implement it perfectly, and they'd be the best leader possible. The secret sauce to effective leadership, in our opinion, and you'll obviously interject as you choose, is know yourself. What are you about? What's non-negotiable? How do you show up? Getting even tactical. Do you expect people to respond to your emails at all hours of the day? What do you believe in a leadership? Are you a rank and file leader? Are you a servant leader? Do you believe in compassion? Do you lack it? Right. So all these things are personal to the individual and then drive their style and philosophy of leadership. The last thing I'll say, at least for now, is most leaders I talk to cannot concisely articulate what their style and philosophy is. They describe many different, but they don't like put the stake in the ground to say, this is who I am. This is what I believe. This is my philosophy. This is how I'm going to show up.
I would agree with that. And that's what we came to on some of these runs is the, I don't want to say it's an aha, but the challenge, let's just put it out there. The challenge of the question I posed was, have you sat down and established what you want your leadership style to be based on your core values, based on how you can ethically show up for yourself every day within an organization that will stand the test of time? So, meaning that you're not a shapeshifter depending on what industry you go to or what position you take or what company that you're going to work with. Now, of course, you always have to be conscious of, what's the values of that company. But if you know your own leadership style and you know your values, you can cross check them against the values of the company and determine, is this even a good fit for me? So you're not constantly having to shapeshift and put on different outfits depending on what company you're working for, and you become known as a leader period, regardless of the industry that you can take with you no matter where you go. So the challenge was, have you actually sat down and done this work for yourself and decided what you want to be, who you want to be as a leader? And that, I think, is something when individuals are, I don't want to say thrown in, but moved into leadership positions, is like you're not wrong. Is here's your KPIs and here's your expectations, and but there's no transition help or support that tells you, or coaches. We coach on the deeper work of this foundation. So that's my challenge to everybody. What are your standards? What are your values? Who do you want to be as a leader? What will stand the test of time? And what can you wake up and feel good about every single day versus feeling like you're always in this friction, and quite frankly, a lot of I don't want to say apprehension, but you're kind of some of the women I've been speaking to, it's like they're not quite sure. And so, that's tiring. And so then you're having all this brain energy spent on spinning of like, I don't know, should I do it this way? Should I do it that way? How would they respond to it? How does he want to respond to it? Versus checking, always coming back to what your philosophy is and implementing that. Obviously, evaluate and iterate as needed. Yeah.
As you're saying that, it also highlights to me the power of being as authentic as possible. Because when you're being authentic, there's no bullshit in the game. You're not putting up smokes and mirrors. You're not trying to deceive anybody. You're just being you within whatever margin of error you want to incorporate to fit a situation. But when you're being authentic, there's nothing to remember. There's nothing to like, oh, what did I tell Rachel? And what did I tell Bob? Like you're just being you. And I think the other thing that I have found, the other thing I have found with leaders is the more they know their style and philosophy, the more freely they can talk about it. And the more they talk about it, the more it's then exposed and the more it's known by everybody else, right? Like whatever the thing is, I was trying to think about an example. I didn't really have one, but if you believe in collaboration, right? When you're in a collaborative environment, you say, this is exactly my style and philosophy about collaborating. I want everybody to have a voice. I'm oversimplifying it, but when we orate and say the thing, talk about it openly, then it just becomes known. And I think real quick, without talking about it, everyone's left to guess, yourself and everybody else included.
That's exactly what I was going to say next, is that it removes assumptions for everybody around you. If you know who you are as a leader, you can communicate it effectively. Everybody else can decide, am I on board with this? Does this work for me? Great. I know exactly what to expect. It's not a Jekyll and Hyde leadership. And you are more confident in who you are. You are reducing uncertainty about how to respond to things, how to act, what to do. And so is your team. And when all of that is removed, the entire organization can be more effective and also less stressed. I think it's super stressful when you have a leader, you're like, God, what is he or she going to be today? Like, what am I going to get in this project? Well, it was this, 2 weeks ago, but now it's this. And that's very stressful, and it just doesn't need to happen. So if we talk about figuring out what your style and philosophy is, a lot of work that you do is figuring out your values, which drives everything in your life, personally and professionally. So how do you use that in helping a leader now establish their style and philosophy?
So the linear way I do that is through values. So without going into all the throes of the story is, I'm a little embarrassed to say I don't know exactly where the values assessment lives today, since we moved over the website and some other moves, but we have a values assessment. And the assessment is structured in a way that removes your bias of how you might choose to rank your values. Removing the bias means that in a one-to-one setting, you will choose value 1 or value 2. Which one's more important to you? Value 1 to 3, 1 to 4, and so on and so forth. So after you complete the assessment, you have an unbiased look at your top values 1 to 10 to 15. We focus on top 5, plus or minus 1 or 2, depending on the person. Once we know your top 5 values, we define it in your words, and then we see how does it show up in work and in life. And the words that I often use is, based upon the way you live and the way you operate and the decisions you make, how does those actions and behaviors honor, respect, or align with your top 5 values? Or vice versa. So once we know what the values mean to the individual, then we start looking at how does it show up in their leadership. And if this sounds kludgy or cloudy in the words I'm saying, I have to ask you to take my word for it that although I can't tell you scientifically it works, anecdotally, I have a lot of evidence that each time I do this exercise with a leader, they have the aha. They recognize the actions they're taking are directly aligned to these top values. And then they can talk about it openly. They can articulate, who am I? Why am I this way, so to speak? How does it influence my leadership style and philosophy? And here's what you can expect from me.
I once had a coach say to me, decisions are very easy when you're clear on your values.
Mm.
And I was like, oh, yeah. So that wishy-washy, that rumination, that over contemplation, the amount of headspace that and others spend or have spent on decisions. Decisions could be just even the next step that you take. All that time spent, when I heard that phrase, when she challenged me on that, I was like, oh, this is why I'm so stressed out. This is why I'm unfulfilled. This is why I feel burned out. This is why I'm crabby. This is why I don't have energy to go to the gym and I'm gaining weight and I'm losing muscle mass. Like so many things that were starting to stack in my life were because I was directly in competition with my core values. And that makes a huge difference, not just on your leadership style and your organization, but your life. And that's something when I talk about with my clients is like your values, they will drive everything. So if you're not clear on them and you don't know why you established them, now is the time to do it. And you and I talk a lot about the trickle effect. Like the trickle effect is not just at work. It's also at home. Because who you are at home and who you are at work, in my opinion, should be fairly consistent. Right? There's not, well, some people have double lives, but most people can't pull that off. So it just reduces a lot of indecision and a lot of what we don't even recognize as downstream negative effects when we are going against our own values.
Sorry, just to build off what you said about the trickle down effect. So trickle down leadership or cascading leadership, we use those kind of interchangeably. And in essence, as we work with senior leaders and they start to grow, then there's this cascading effect or this trickle down effect where what they've learned, they then impart on their next in command, if you will. Same at home, right? Trickles down from parent to child. So the idea is that, and I've seen this happen firsthand where the leader did their values work, saw how it was showing up in their leadership, and then they taught it to their direct reports. And they coached their direct reports on doing the same activity, the same exercise, the same exploration. And then as those leaders did it, it trickled down to the next round. And what we start to see is like a more refined, sophisticated, high performing team from top to bottom and then bottom up, because we're talking openly about our values and what we believe. And so that's the cascade and the trickle effect.
Yeah, it's no different than generational conditioning. It's the exact same thing. It's like what you learn from the person that is modeling to you the way. So I guess what I'm trying to say is it's more profound than just at work. And we always talk about you don't live your life in silos. You just don't. It's impossible. And so figuring this out now, I mean, I think about people in their marriages, my clients in their marriages, my clients in their relationships with their kids, with their family members, decisions they make to stay within a certain position or a certain company. Like there's so much here and it's not that hard of work to do. And when you're clear on it, and then if you have the confidence to act upon it, I think that's huge, at least for the women that I coach, the individuals that I coach, is sometimes they'll identify their core values and then they have a moment of like, "Oh shit, my life has not been created with these as the forerunner, with these as the playbook. Now what am I gonna do?" That's kinda scary too. So it's not all it's always beneficial whether you use it in the now or in the future. So when you talk about values, so you talk about your philosophy established from your core values. Now you got to communicate them. You got to create transparency around them so others know your own playbook. Others know what boundaries are established. So when you say, and we have in our notes, speak the unspoken, right? Transparency breeds trust. How do you coach to that?
What I find with a lot of my clients, and even you and I, humans in general, our friends, family, etc., is that for those of us that talk to ourselves, we live in this incessant internal chatter and narrative. And often what I find is the chatter is louder when we have unanswered questions. Unanswered questions is the unspoken. Now I'm using that loosely because sometimes the unspoken is, what is my style and philosophy? What are my values? How do you earn my trust? How do you erode my trust? Am I doing a good job? Do you think I'm a good leader? This is all the unspoken. And the antidote that I have learned for myself and my clients is say the thing. Whatever the thing is, if it's the question that doesn't have an answer, if you're unsure if you're being an effective leader, if you think you're on the firing line, if fill in the blank, I mean, there's a million and one ifs. The other part of speaking the unspoken is, as the leader, your team is looking to you to lead them. And if you are unclear and you have this identity crisis, once you start to figure out what your values are and what your style and philosophy is, speak it. Let the team know that this is what I care about. These are my values. This is important to me. Here's how you can expect me to show up. Here's how I expect you to show up. This is how we're going to run our team. Like, stand in it. It doesn't need to be dictatorial, like a dictator, right? It's more of communicating openly. This is how I'm going to be, how I want you to be. Can we agree to it? Great. Let's go forward.
Okay, I have a question about that. Because what just came up for me was there can be a lot of fear around speaking your values and being transparent and, just as we say the thing. That can be really scary. I know for myself, like, I get really hot. My stomach feels tight. I feel nervous. I probably am twitching my foot like a couple times this week when we've had discussions around some hot topics around values. Like, you'll see my foot like, and when that comes up, sometimes, many times, individuals will choose to honor that fear and obey that fear rather than acknowledge it and still say the thing. I don't know if this is resonating, but have you seen that in your coaching? Because I've seen that in my coaching. We're like, I don't know. I'm afraid. Do I say it? Do I not say it? Like, are people going to like this? I don't want to come off too strong, blah, this like back and forth. And so therefore they'd rather just kind of stay over here because fear is probably more comfortable from them than actually communicating their values and their boundaries. Is that a thing for your clients?
A little less so than for yours, because we've talked about this, you and I. With the deliberation of do I or don't I say something, I immediately go to values. What value or values are you honoring by not speaking up? And then conversely, what values would you be honoring if you did speak up? Right. So the values become this very strong barometer as opposed to an ancillary pros and cons list. Like we say, if we do this thing, how does it honor or dishonor value 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? 2, when you are a leader, I don't think anyone's going to convince me otherwise. You have an obligation and you are required to speak up, period. That's to your peers. That's to your senior leaders. That is most definitely your direct reports. Again, doesn't mean you're speaking up like a dictator. Doesn't mean you're berating people, but there is a requirement and an obligation in my experience that leaders speak up, period. Now, if they're unwilling to speak up, that's the thing we've got to coach to. And then I come full circle to, if you're unwilling to speak up, what's going on with values?
Yeah. I mean, I think sometimes for my clients, it's not necessarily, maybe what I'm seeing is it's not necessarily what's going on with your values. It's what has happened in the past that is making you so afraid to speak up. Like, what is your past lived experiences that is creating this fear, that is creating this apprehension, this nervousness, this uncertainty? And so I would coach to that of like looking back in time and then determining, well, as we all say, right? If you do what you did in the past, you're going to get the same results. So what do we need to do going forward? And this is where, okay, I just want to be clear. This is the next level work. Like what you and I know is the work that has to happen, that fundamentally has to happen within yourself in order to grow. And, we kind of make fun of like the PowerPoints and we're not making fun of the consulting, but sometimes there's a lot of surface level uh, tools, if you will, practices, tips, hacks, which I hate, but there's a lot of surface level action oriented directions that leaders can take. Well, that's great. But if you're not actually doing the work below, that's the foundation. And you and I have talked about this, and we had to do this in our own personal relationship, is like reevaluate, okay, what is this relationship built on? What does our foundation look like? And we found the cracks, we found leaning walls, we found all the problems that had to go in and rebuild from the deeper work. And that's the stuff that takes more time, doesn't feel as great. There's no KPI attached to it. How do you know if you're doing it right? Did you hit the metric? Did you check the box? So when we talk about this stuff, we're talking about the truth behind not just leadership. I always say, like, I never just coach to leadership at work, but leadership in your life, being the leader in your life, at work, at home, in all facets. So I just want to put that out there. It's not like this, oh, just speak to your trust and speak to your values and speak to your philosophy. It's much deeper than that, and it's a lot harder. So that's my soapbox for coaching.
Well said.
But it's truth.
It is truth.
Okay. Do you have anything else on the trust piece?
Well, we didn't get the trust yet. We were just talking about speak the unspoken.
Oh, I'm totally ahead of the game.
Yes, you are.
Clearly, I want to get to number 5, bitch or bimbo. All right. So speak the unspoken. Recognize my cues are like, recognize what's coming up for me. Why do I feel this way? Why am I nervous? Why am I scared? Oh, it's probably something that has happened in my past. Great. Root cause. Can't address that. Because okay, so here's what I think. Then when you're able to communicate that, I think by default, you've learned to trust yourself. So when you can trust yourself to deliver the hard messages, to have done the work to find the root cause of why you're behaving the way you're behaving or not behaving the way you want to behave, right? There's trust within yourself, trust within your team. So you talk about a lot when you're coaching. What is the trust piece for you?
Yeah, it's broad, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because I often go to the external trust of how much do I trust someone else? How do they erode my trust? How do they recover or repair my trust? And then I easily overlook trusting ourselves. If I look at my own history, is I could pretty much trust I was going to lose my temper in many of my corporate experiences. And so because I could trust I would lose my temper, often I didn't speak up, which goes against some of my core values. So of course there's a give and take there. Anyway, what I learned through a number of clients, and it was really more recent, was that the clients I'm thinking of, what we realized is they were running these quote unquote secret trust experiments. So what they were doing is like they were laying traps, right? They would ask a leading question. They would withhold information. They would run these experiments to see, would your natural response earn or erode my trust? Now, I don't have a succinct example. That doesn't make sense?
No, it totally makes sense. I think it's just kind of fucked up.
Sorry, you're making a face there. Well, we all do it.
No, agreed. I'm sure I've done it. I can guarantee that I have done it too. which is
Yes.
probably why it's rubbing me the wrong way because,
Me.
yeah, exactly.
So the idea of trust. Um, what I've coached through with a few of these clients I'm thinking of more recently is, what does trust mean to you? How do people earn your trust? How do people erode your trust? How do you repair it once it's been eroded? And tell the people. So it's the same thing as the speak the unspoken. One client in particular that I'm thinking of was running these trust experiments with a contractor. The contractor continued to fail, and my client's level of trust in that contractor was gone. This contractor could never do anything right, never earn the benefit of the doubt. Anytime there was doubt, my client thought, oh, well, this person's not trustworthy. Of course, they did this maliciously or with sinister intent or to harm us or me or the company. But it was all secretive. The next contractor, after the work we did, she spoke openly. Here's how you earn my trust: the quality of work, the breadth that I'm asking you to look through, how often I want you to communicate with me, how often I'm going to communicate with you. And then to the flip side or the contrary, you're going to erode my trust by cutting corners, doing half-assed work, uh, filling out status updates with bullshit that you never did. I mean, I'm making it simplistic, but these are true examples. Uh, Surprisingly, haha, with sarcasm, the relationship with this new contractor is that much better. And when there have been smaller infractions on trust, they were addressed in the moment. And so everything was building on the up and up as opposed to down and down.
Mm. I just had this thought of like, there's such a correlation between the leadership style using that and your personal life. I think about a lot of relationships who don't have that depth of conversation and clarity. Like, I just think that would, well, you and I know we're not exempt. We have had our own trust issues that we've had to work through within our personal relationship. And I had to learn to trust myself to stay true to who I was and my values in order to communicate to you when you were maybe breaking them, or what the guidelines were to participate in my life. And so this is a big one because this encompasses literally everything in your life. What I see with my clients is the internal trust, that they're not trusting themselves to do what they say they're going to do, to make maybe some big, bold moves. And again, I don't speak to just leadership. I work with leaders. This is in their health. This is in their personal life. But trusting themselves to make big, bold moves, trusting themselves to advocate for themselves, trusting themselves to speak up and out when necessary. You know, like it's so much deeper than just I'm a leader and team, this is how we're gonna work together based on trust. It always has to be internal, in my opinion. So where I would guess, I would say, where are you not trusting yourself? Even if it's micro infractions, like saying you're going to go to the gym and work out and you don't, like saying you're not going to respond to emails at 4 o'clock in the morning and you don't. Are you continually violating your own trust? And if you are, how can you expect anyone else to trust you? How can you expect to have a reciprocal relationship with yourself and others if you're constantly saying one thing and not doing it? That is completely incongruent to me, and that is a core value of mine, is being in integrity and being congruent. So that is how I coach to the trust piece, is trust yourself first. Anything else on that?
No.
No. You're really keeping me on track here today. 45 minutes. I'm going to win your trust with this one by staying on track for 45 minutes and no more. All right, let's talk about this bitch or bimbo concept. Okay. Going back to my group of women that I run with. There's and many other women too, okay? So this is not just my running squad. Is this belief or philosophy that if you're one way in your leadership style, you're seen as quote unquote a bitch. But if you are this way, are you the bimbo? And it's not as linear as those two. It's what we're saying here is there is a fear around the optics of what other people think of you as a leader. Too soft, too aggressive, to this, to that. And so we talk about this shape shifting, and you're constantly trying to shape shift for the person around you to mitigate other people's perception of you. And that is where I see people getting in trouble. And quite frankly, with women, there's a little bit of a damned if you do and a damned if you don't that still exists in the workforce. So we all try to go into this very narrow lane of vanilla where we don't want to be too much of anything, which means you're kind of just a watered down. And look, I'm not trying to be mean, but you're a little bit of a watered down version of yourself that isn't taking a bold stance one way or the other based on who you are, your core values, and your style and philosophy of authentically yourself, that you talk, be authentic. How does this show up with your clients? Or does it?
I got to be honest, it doesn't really show up with my clients. The men and the women I work with, whether it be them or their organization, their learned experience, their generational conditioning, as you said earlier, is they don't seem to waver too much on who they are as a leader. With that being said, I am thinking about one female leader I worked with, and she rose to the senior ranks, along the lines of what got you here won't get you there. When she was there at these senior ranks, she was exhibiting certain behaviors that were seen as defensive and argumentative. So it wasn't so much that she was being a bitch or a bimbo per se. Maybe I'm being too literal in the words, but she was acting in a way that was self-sabotaging. Now, part of the problem with this whole story is the organization and the people in this organization never gave her succinct examples of where she was being defensive and argumentative. She knew it within herself that it was a shortcoming. She recognized the physiological responses, her skin getting red, feeling hot in her chest, making fists because she was ready to fight. But she had these behaviors, and it wasn't necessarily a conscious choice. It was more visceral. That's the right word, I think it is. But yeah, she had these triggers and these situations that then she got defensive and then act in those ways. But generally speaking, a lot of my clients are fairly confident in who they are as a leader. A lot of my clients struggle with anger, defensiveness, lashing out, going on the attack. Even I've had a couple clients curse at other people in the public forum, call people out, this kind of thing. So it's more about the self-management and a little bit less than I think what you coach your clients to on finding that lane that's authentic and balanced, whatever that means for the individual. Your balance is different than mine, is different than Joey's and Mary's and everybody else in between.
Well, yes, I agree that there's emotional regulation that is necessary in a professional setting. Oh, in any setting. right? If you're trying to go forward, you have to have some type of emotional regulation. No doubt about it. Where I see things get a little dicey is when women are, how do I explain this? When they're more concerned with how they're going to be perceived by others than being confident with who they are within themselves. Fully recognizing that women are perceived differently in the workforce than men. I'm being stereotypical here. I fully recognize that too. Okay. So we're just using that very heteronormative language. Okay. So that is what I see with my clients is this like, I can't be a certain way because of how others are going to perceive me. Well, here's what happens is when you do that for so long, you don't even know who you are anymore. You just know that there's this underlying turbulence. There's this sense of like, you just override it. Quite frankly, I see my clients they have overrode their emotions for so long because those emotions, right? Emotions will drive our actions many times, as you just said, but they just override them for so long that they don't even know because what they're trying to do is mitigate everybody else. And this will not work long term. It is not sustainable. You will burn out, you will exhaust, you will start pointing fingers about, toxic workforces when you're creating your own toxicity, quite frankly. And so I coach them to listen. You are being judged, let's all agree to it. Everybody is judging everybody else. But if you're going to spend all your energy trying to figure out how to act and behave to accommodate everybody else, you are going to be very inefficient as a leader, and you are, quite frankly, not going to sustain or grow. It's just not enjoyable. And what I see with my clients, there is a health consequence attached to this. You cannot continue to suppress emotions, to shapeshift, to not honor your values, to go against what is your own, be incongruent in your life and not have it come with some type of health problem, whether that's gaining weight, if that's PCOS, hormonal imbalance, autoimmune, Hashimoto's, it's happening. So when we talk about this, I coach to doing all the things that you and I have talked about in this episode, doing that. And then, as you like to say, going out and running experiments on it. And I say, go out and practice it. It's the only way it's going to happen. You've got to be brave enough to put it out there, evaluate how did it feel with you? What was the response that you got? And iterate always according to your own value system. So you're never going to win. And I've written about this before, you will never win when you're trying to accommodate somebody else's standards of how you should live your life. It's more important that you like you for who you are than others like you for who you're not.
Well, that's a soundbite.
I've been there. I've done that. Wasn't fun. Okay, so we're going to wrap up because I'm building trust by staying on track for 45 minutes. Because you clearly communicated your value here. Say that tongue in cheek. Next week, what are we talking about next week?
Oh, we're going through our some of our
next week. Okay, January 28th, I believe. I think that's our date. We're going to be talking about, we're going to go strategic. We're going to go A-line here. We're going to talk about the exact 5 tools, the exact tools that we use with our clients. You're going to walk away with tangibles that you can implement immediately. So it's almost like coaching for free-ish. And then you get a little bit of an insight of like, how do we work with our clients? And what are the things that you can take with you Take them, leave them. Either way, we hope you're back here next Tuesday. And please, 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 just because we've put so much blood, sweat, and tears into our new website, please check out thecantholgroup.com. Give us a little boost in our SEO. We would love that. And we'll see you all next week.
See you next Tuesday.
Tuesday.
All right. Nice job, babes.
Thanks. You realize it says meeting Dan Canthal and Juan Pedro?